So a lot of you have been messaging me saying that you're scared and you're worried, and I'm with you. I completely agree, but we cannot give up because that is how democracy dies. Now, part of not giving up means strategically and peacefully resetting, refocusing, and regrouping. And what that looks like is a reckoning with both the Democratic voter and the Democratic Party as a whole. Now, today I am only going to talk to the Democratic voter. I am sorry to tell you this, but most of you are just as racist, sexist, and ignorant as Republican voters. And that's not just white people. There are a lot of this in my communities of color as well. Now, proof number one, you had a choice between a prosecutor or a criminal, and you picked the criminal, who was the preferred candidate for members of the KKK. Proof two, you had a choice between a competent leader or an extremist who wants to abolish the Department of Education, terminate the Constitution, drill for oil on public lands, create a Muslim ban, deport Latinos, undermine civil rights for African Americans, and roll back protections for the LGBTQ plus community. And you picked the extremists. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Ashwani, I didn't vote for Trump. Well, guess what? Not voting or voting for a third-party candidate in an established two-party system during a general election where we do not have ranked choice voting was a vote for the criminal. And if you still don't understand that, just look at who's going to be our next president. You need to finally stand up for what you say you believe in, not just emotionally at protests, but strategically at the voting booth. I'm sorry to say. Now, one way you can start is by voting for candidates in a primary election, where you often have many options to choose from, who are actually accessible, accountable, and transparent. So instead of supporting candidates who will just say they'll give you a seat at the table once they're elected, support those who grant you direct and full access from day one of their campaigns, where they not only ask you to donate to Canvass or to Phone Bank, but they also provide you direct access to the candidate and an ability to impact policy and strategy without any required time or financial commitment. And instead of supporting candidates who only share a few sentences with generic policy rhetoric on their websites, which most candidates do, support those who instead detail exactly what they plan to accomplish if and when elected. Now, what does that look like? I'm going to give you just 4 examples. Number one, instead of just supporting a candidate who simply says, I support reproductive justice, support one who says, I want to enshrine abortion care and gender-affirming therapy in our state constitution or at the federal level, make sure we have comprehensive sex ed in all of our public schools, and make all menstrual products free in public restrooms. Another example, instead of supporting a candidate who simply says, I care about democracy, support one who says, hey, I support term limits for elected officials and Supreme Court justices. I support banning members of Congress from owning stocks while in office, and I support ranked choice voting. Instead of supporting a candidate who simply says, I want universal health care, whatever that means, support one who specifies a support for Medicare for all. And instead of supporting a candidate who, for example, says, I care about climate change, support one who says, I support specifically banning fracking and drilling on public lands, refusing donations from polluters, installing more electric charging stations, and building more offshore wind turbines instead of oil drillers. And for anyone who thinks that's not possible, I offer you my campaigns as a tangible example of what can be accomplished. Both in 2022, when I became the youngest person to run for Maryland governor, and even earlier this year, when I ran for Congress and earned a strong 3rd place finish out of 16 candidates. In both those campaigns, we proved you can run a successful campaign within the Democratic Party while being nuanced and sincere. And there are countless examples of this going around in local and statewide races around the country. So please step up and organize.